Hey guys, welcome to the midwinter break video number 4, continuation with the Renaissance. Today we're looking at Fra Filippo Lippi and Sandro Botticelli. On the lower left-hand corner we have Botticelli's Birth of Venus. On the lower right-hand corner we have Fra Filippo Lippi's Madonna and Child with two angels. We're going to start off by taking a look at Fra Filippo Lippi. He was definitely an interesting man. He was a Florentine painter in the second generation of Renaissance artists, and while also exhibiting the influence of Masaccio, who we just looked at with his Trinity, okay, or his Madonna and Child, which you can see a strong influence of, and Fra Angelico, who was another Florentine painter that we are not continuing to look at. His work achieved a distinctive clarity of expression. Legend and tradition definitely surrounded his unconventional life. And let me tell you, his life was very unconventional. He was born into a very large and very poor family in Florence, and after the death of both his father and mother, the young Filippo was raised by an aunt for some years, and later she placed him with his brother in a convent of Carmelite monks at Santa Maria del Carmine. The Brancacci chapel of the monastery was at that time being decorated with frescoes by Masaccio. These frescoes were to be among the most glorious and influential paintings of the Renaissance. They were Lippi's first important contact with art. So as a young child, he's sent out to live with these monks. He's not necessarily born to be a man of the religious fever. And we'll get into that on why. But here on the lower left, again, we have the Brancacci Chapel, and we have the inside with the frescoes of Masaccio on the right. Again, just some to remember past videos, okay? So in 1442, Lippi had been made the rector of the Church of Santa Quirico at Lignai, and I can't pronounce that. His life, however, became consistently more eventful, and tradition has given him the reputation, born out of the great part of documents, firsthand accounts of Lippi at the time, of a man dominated by love affairs and impatient of methodological and tranquil conduct. Interesting. His adventures culminated in 1456 in his romantic flight from Prato, where he was painting in the convent of the nuns of San Margherita with a young nun convent, Lucretia Lippi. From 1456 to 1458, Lippi lived with Lucretia, her sister, and a few other nuns. Lippi's conduct, together with his apparent inability to fulfill contracts at the time for his paintings, got him in trouble. He was arrested, tried, and tortured in jail. It was only thanks to the intervention of his wonderful patron, Cosimo de' Medici, that Lippi was released and allowed to renounce his vows. Pope later gave him permission for the former priest painter to marry the nun. So he lived a very interesting life, and many people say that he was a complete womanizer. And here we have his relationship with Lucretia in all of his portraits. So we look at this picture of the Madonna and Child with two angels here on this page, and he always painted his beautiful bride. Okay, so Lucretia was his model for all of his Madonnas, and that's why many of his Madonnas look very, very similar, because they were all the same woman. Some people also believe that this was a family portrait, that was his son, Filippo Lippi, there as the child, okay, and obviously Lucretia as the Madonna. This work itself is a very playful and humanistic work of art. Um, and this is a real turning point for Renaissance artists. Gone are the Byzantine misproportions of the human body. Okay, here we have a very realistic sitter, somebody we can see dimension. This looks a real person. Also, before in class, we had talked a little bit about the halo and how the halo was very, very large, gold, circular thing behind the head of a person. And now, because of this tradition of moving forward and making these works of art so much more realistic, we can see the halo here in the background of look behind Madonna's head, just right here. Okay, you see that halo barely visible, but yet it is. Okay, so while we're talking about this halo from before, it's interesting to see because um, the actual stylistic of painting is changing. Things are not as flat as they once were. You have to make things realistic. Well, realistically, you're not going to find a large golden orb behind somebody's head. So they're trying to still put that sense of divinity in the painting without making it seem unrealistic. So here we have these very, very faint circular halos behind the head. Okay, so also we have this frame around the actual painting and a frame of a window. And the actual frame of the window in this portrait becomes the actual frame of the painting. So it's a way to contain this painting in one specific area. Okay. There's also a sense of atmospheric perspective in the background. We see this sense of there is a background, there's things going on, and you can see through the window, okay, or frame of the picture, the background gets smaller and smaller as things get away. So that sense of atmospheric perspective is definitely coming into play here. Mary also becomes relatable. She is a normal person, okay? She is very beautiful, but she is a real person. Fra Filippo Lippi was also the teacher of Botticelli. Botticelli is who we're going to look at next. And you can see that we'll look at Botticelli has very beautiful, fine work with his pen, or excuse me, his paintbrush. And around Lucretia Madonna's head is this very, very beautiful veil, this almost see-through like veil. And you're going to see that same style come into play when we're looking at Botticelli next. So you can see how Botticelli definitely took in some of his master painters' ideals in some of his paintings. So again, we move on to Sandro Botticelli. Botticelli, born and died in Florence in 1445, and well, that's when he was born, and died in 1510. He was the closest painter to the Medici family circle. And between 1464 and 1467, Botticelli completed his first practice in the workshop of Filippo Lippi, who passed on the artistic ideals of melancholic feminine beauty. Okay, so we're going to see that same feminine beauty in Botticelli's work, along with some of those same brushstrokes that we just talked about. So his friend and patron, Lorenzo Medici, commissioned Botticelli to create the Allegoria della Primavera, or the Primavera, which is also known as the springtime, okay, or the spring as it's translated. In 1478, that's when it was commissioned. And the most famous mythological painting emerged from the 15th century. So what we see here, this beautiful mythological painting. So we're going to take a closer look at some of these paintings. Now, if we look at the various figures here, okay, on this specific painting, we're going to look at this is divided into semiotic groups. So, but combining a single kind of order to it. So they're all situated on a background of orange trees. So this is kind of like an orange tree forest. There's all these beautiful lawn of blooming flowers below them. And the orange tree is actually a symbol for the Medici family. So by that, we see obviously a signal that this is a Medici painting by including those orange trees in the background. On the left, we see Mercury, okay? And we'll go back over these characters. Then next to Mercury, on the right to Mercury, there are three dancing graces, okay? Then there's obviously Venus in the middle, okay? Then we have Flora and Zephyr, and we'll get into what these actual humans mean and why this is called La Primavera. This work, though, is a non-Platonic reinterpretation of classical myths and of an idealized humanistic heaven surrounded by the harmony of nature. The style of this, though it's not classical and even goes against the principles of the Renaissance art, the volume is created by the outlines more than the shadows. So if you look at these people, they're kind of just placed in a background. Although they initially look like they belong there, there's no real shadows, there's no real depth. It's all has a sense of flatness in the background, but yet the images themselves of the people look very dimensional and do have this sense of depth with shadow. Now, so here we see again these elongated linear figures, and this is a relation to Greek and Roman mythology. So Venus in the center of our picture has a halo almost with the way that the trees are surrounding her. So we're just going to take a look at this real quick, and it's almost as if she has a little halo surrounding her with these trees and the way that it's shaped to her background. Now, obviously, this is the Roman goddess of Venus. Her presence is a reflection of the human interest in the classical world. Obviously popular in Florence, she is depicted as the idealized woman, slightly off-centered with her head tilted and gesturing to her right. Above her, obviously, is a blindfolded Cupid, who is Venus's son. To the far left, right here, we have Mercury, god of the month of May. And he has a staff in which he may be using to usher the winds, all the winter clouds away. So right here you see this winter clouds. Here's his staff, and he's trying to move those clouds away. He's also identifiable by his winged sandals. So you see down here his winged sandals. That is truly what identifies him as Mercury. So, the right of Mercury are the three graces. Okay, so right here we have our three graces. And the women who appear to be dancing, who were modeled by an ancient depiction, these figures represent chastity, beauty, and love, all of which point to romance and provide us with a context in terms with what is going on in the painting. Okay, here we can see them representing a type of purity in the painting. Their clothing is like lace. Again, their clothing is very reminiscent of this style that we first saw in Fra Filippo Lippi. It's very light, you can see through it. And on Mary's head, there's all, that's what we would look at with Fra Filippo Lippi, with the actual veil on Mary's head. They are being targeted here, the three graces, by Cupid's arrow, which reinforces the idea of marriage. So here, little Cupid is going to shoot them with his arrow and reinforce that Roman Greek mythology of marriage. Okay. On the right-hand side, you see Zephyrus, which is the west wind, about ready to take a nymph named Chloris. So that's what we see going on here. After he takes her for his own, they are married, and Chloris actually transforms here, okay, that's the transformation, to Flora, who is the spring goddess. Here, Flora is throwing flowers gathered in her dress, and this means a symbolization of both springtime and fertility. So all these ideas point to a springtime marriage, obviously somebody close to the Medicis at the time.